Today on Locked On Penguins, the Penguins drop yet another hard-fought loss, this time to the Colorado Avalanche. We talk about one of the Penguins' most interesting players heading to the deadline saying they'd like to remain in Pittsburgh. And of course, we hand out our picks for Warrior Helmet Wednesday. We will do all of that right after this.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Patrick Damp. You can follow me across all social media platforms at Synonym for Wet. Joined as always by my partner in crime, the one and only Hunter Hodes. You can follow him on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. You can give our show's Twitter account a follow at LO_Penguins. And of course, don't forget that we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as the Roku channel and YouTube. If you follow us on YouTube, especially during trade deadline week, don't forget to hit that notification button so you can be among the first to know when we drop our daily Monday through Friday episodes or any of our breaking news episodes. And of course, we all appreciate you being part of your daily routine. Now, what I just said, to make sure that you are following us on YouTube and got the notifications ready to go, we are getting this episode out of the way early today. Both Hunter and I have heard some rumblings that the Penguins could be active in the trade market as early as today. So if they are, once we know what trades the Penguins have made, we will both look at them, analyze them, and try to get an episode up for you within the hour of that trade becoming official. So keep an eye out for that. But first, Hunter, the Penguins did play a game last night in Denver, Colorado, dropping a 4-1 decision to the Colorado Avalanche. The score makes it sound a lot worse than it actually was. Fact of the matter is, this was yet another game where the Penguins just were not as good as the Colorado Avalanche as a whole. They played a very solid game. They fought to the very end. They give up 2 empty net goals at the end to make that 4-1 final. But overall, you look at last night's game, and it was as if the Penguins themselves listened to Locked On Penguins and listened to the one and only Hunter Hodes when he said, if there's one good thing you can say about this team this year, is that they may not be very good, but they fight until the very end. And they played a very, very solid game against Colorado last night. One of their better defensive performances of this season. They also were pretty much going punch for punch with Colorado throughout the night. They are able to outshoot them. They're able to get a lot of good looks, but the difference becomes one defensive breakdown on Colorado's first goal, where Erik Karlsson, you can't totally blame him because it was an elite pass by Nathan MacKinnon, something he just does all the time. And you can't really put too much blame on Karlsson, but you should probably say, hey, that guy in the slot should probably not be that wide open. Then the Penguins take a late penalty in the third period that ends up being the difference. Colorado converts on their only power play of the game, giving them a 2-1 lead. So all in all, though, I look at last night's performance and it falls into the box of what we have been saying all season long. We know this team's not very good. We know this team is going to lose games, but put up a fight, make it interesting. And against a very good Colorado team, they did just that.
Yeah, I thought they outplayed them for the full 60 minutes last night. I thought they were the better team through and through. They outshot them. They outchanced them. They had more expected goals than Colorado, and that was evident just by looking at the eye test. The Penguins were getting more quality chances than the Avalanche, but in typical Penguins form, Pat, as has been the case for the last 4 to 5 years, they cannot finish chances. Again, I have been waiting for this to revert to the mean, but it's not going to. I don't know when it's going to revert back to the mean when they actually are a league average team in terms of finishing chances. It continues to baffle me at how they're so good at generating chances, but again, they just don't go in the back of the net. Scott Wedgwood, once again, very good against the Penguins. And I texted you this last night. Would you believe me and everyone out there? Would you believe me if I told you that Scott Wedgwood coming into this game was a .927 goalie against the Penguins? Seriously.
I mean, Sure. It's so funny to me, and I obviously haven't run the numbers to back all of this up, but it's very funny to me that in the Crosby Malkin era, that you go through some of the best goalies of the last 15 to 20 years, whether it's Henrik Lundqvist, Igor Shesterkin, Ryan Miller, Carey Price, you name it. The Penguins found a way to just torture them. But then someone like that, for
Yep.
some reason, can just stonewall this team. It's one of the most underratedly hilarious things about this era of Penguins hockey, that they have been able to make some of the greatest goalies of the last 2 decades look absolutely pedestrian. And then when journeyman no-name goalie goes up against the Penguins, he turns into prime Patrick Waugh.
Yeah, I mean, Scott Wedgwood was very good last night. Made a lot of really good 10-bell saves. The only goal that beat him was a crazy play by the top line. Rickard Rakell gets his 29th goal. More on him coming up in the second segment. And also for Warrior Helmet Wednesday, by the way. Hint, hint. Stay tuned for that. But he was once again brilliant. Sidney Crosby was really good in this game. The top line was also just tremendous. That pass from Brian Russ to Rakell for that goal was, it was sensational. And loved the announcer's jinx from Josh Getzoff. He even said, like, man, Wedgwood's having a really good game so far. Not 5 seconds later, Rakell puts the puck in the back of the net. So that was a nice little jinx, at least for that one, before Wedgwood went on to stonewall them for the rest of the game. But I also want to discuss Kolyachonok, Pat, his debut for the Penguins. I felt he played fairly well. He led the Penguins in terms of average game score among all defensemen on the team. 10 scoring chances for, 1 scoring chance against, was also well above even in terms of shot attempts per 60 minutes last night. Eye test wise, I thought his gap control was really good. His speed is so evident when he's on the ice. Like, he skates like the wind. Like, that's on his film in his prior teams to the Penguins. It was on display last night as well. He was tremendous. And again, keep playing him. I want to see what they have in this kid. He was good in his own zone. He made the right timed pinches, as opposed to a lot of the other defensemen on this team who really don't know when to pinch. They make all these 25, 75 plays, 30, 70 plays, all that stuff. But Kolyachonok was always in the right position, skated beautifully, was really able to break the puck out of his own zone. I liked his game last night. I don't want to overreact or anything. It's one game. But again, keep seeing what you have in this kid. I thought he played fairly well.
Yeah, I thought it was a great debut for him. Like you said, the thing that stood out most to me was what we talked about for the tape, where you could see that he is a very fluid, very strong skater, and that was on display last night, which you look at the team that the Penguins were going up against. Colorado's a great skating team.
Mm-hmm.
That has been their hallmark for the last 5 or 6 years, is that they play a very fluid, very up-tempo, fast style of hockey. And he wasn't overwhelmed by that. He was in good position for the majority of the night. Like you said, the gap control was there. He did not give opposing players very much room to make a decision. He kept them mostly to the low percentage points of the offensive zone. He was keeping them to the outside. And the decision making was solid. Like you said, you look at the way he pinched a few times, and if it wasn't a scoring chance, at the very least, it was keeping the Penguins' offensive attack alive. And that really, more than scoring chances, is the biggest thing you're looking for when a defenseman pinches, isn't to get a scoring chance. It's to keep your offensive attack going. And he made mostly the right decisions to do that on Tuesday night. So again, extremely small sample size. It's his first game. You don't know if that's that first game euphoria of you're finally in the lineup, you're getting a chance, you're amped up and ready to go. You want to see what happens when the rubber really hits the road and he's going to get 5, 6, 10, 15 games in. And if this continues, but early returns are good. Like you did, I watched his film from prior to the acquisition and was impressed by his game. I think there is a solid middle pairing defenseman there if he develops correctly. But as we continue to say, This is the type of player that the Penguins are going to target over the next couple of years. Younger player, kind of falls out of favor, doesn't get as much of a chance with another franchise, gets a chance, an extended look here, and the opportunity to grow and become part of the team's solution over the next 5 to 6 years. So, liked his debut. One last thing I wanted to mention about last night. Thought it was a very strong bounce back game for Alex Nedeljkovic.
Yeah.
He had a couple decisions playing the puck that I didn't like. There was one that led to what was basically a 2-on-0. And at that point, if you're Nedeljkovic, just leave the puck behind the net. You don't have to make the pass. But outside of that, thought he played a very strong game, made the saves he needed to make. He actually, outside of that one blunder of playing the puck, thought he actually was pretty effective playing the puck last night. He jump started a couple of breakouts, which was able to blunt the Avalanche's forecheck. So overall, nice bounce back for Alex Nedeljkovic.
Yeah, I thought he played very well last night. The 2 goals that he gave up, really not his fault. Artturi Lehkonen wide open in front of the net. No goalie's going to save that. Beautiful pass, from McKinnon. And then the middle stat goal, puck banks off him and goes in. Like, yeah, it's from a little bit of a tough angle, but that's also a really tough save to make. I think the penalty kill was a bit more to blame there. I did not like the way the Penguins were killing that penalty. Just way too passive in their own zone. They let the Avalanche gain the zone with such ease. That's been a problem for a good chunk of the season. Now, I know the penalty kill started out really strong in that first, month and a half. Since then, though, it's fizzled out. And I'm not a fan of where this unit has been for most of the season. Like, it's kind of hovering around league average right now. This unit should be higher up. Like, usually we, under the Mike Sullivan era, we see the penalty killing unit, hovering around that top 10 range, especially when they were winning those 2 Stanley Cups in 2016, 2017. But this year, definitely not nearly as good under Mike Vellucci. Again, that needs to change heading into the 25-26 season. I just did not like the way they were killing that. And I understand that you're going up against an Avalanche power play that's one of the best in the league. They have Makar, they have McKinnon, they have Nichushkin, they have Artturi Lehkonen out there. Very good players. Marty Necas, of course, has been awesome with them. He was really good last night too. But you still need to do a better job of killing that penalty. And I feel bad for Anthony Beauviller, man, because I think he's had a pretty decent Penguins tenure. And that play that he made at the end of the third period might be the last play that he will make in a Penguins uniform. So that just kind of makes me a little bit sad, just because he had a couple good chances earlier in the game, one of which was a mini breakaway that he just could not beat Wedgwood 5-hole, but then takes the penalty with 5:37 left. Avalanche score on that. They go on to win the game. It's just going to stink if that's if that's his final play, in a Penguins uniform. But again, man, I thought they played as well as they could have. At the very least, this team shows fight. They haven't quit. They're just not very good, people. Like, that's the bottom line.
Yep, that's pretty much the long and the short of it. They're not playing all that poorly overall. They're just not a very good team. No. And that's kind of what we expected at this point. But that is going to do it for our first segment. When we return, Rickard Rakell with some interesting post-game comments to the media. We will discuss those as well as get a little bit more into the trade deadline, but we will do that when we come back. So stick with us. We'll do that right after this. But first, we got to tell you about today's sponsor, and that is FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I never feel like I've missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if their first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, welcome back to the Wednesday. I almost said Tuesday. Boy, this week is just, it's going slow because it's trade deadline week and we're all waiting for the big news, but it is the Wednesday edition of Locked On Penguins. I'm Patrick Damp alongside Hunter Hodes and Rickard Rakell, man. This is a really tough week for him because he really is kind of the golden prize from the Pittsburgh Penguins and one of the probably more sought after players at this trade deadline. 1 goal away from another 30-goal year. He has bounced back tremendously from what was a down year last season. And you can tell from his comments last night that he knows that he is probably on his way out, whether it's this week or in the off season. He does have a little bit of a no move clause. It's a no trade list to a couple of teams, but you can tell that those are not teams that are going to be vying for his services, I would imagine, just because they're probably teams that are in a similar position to the Penguins. But he said last night, when asked about if this could have been his last game in a Penguins uniform, I hope not. That's the only thing on my mind. I love my teammates. I love playing for the Penguins. I love this group, and I love Pittsburgh. So I don't know. I still lean towards I see him getting moved in the offseason. I think the market expands for him once the salary cap goes up. Teams have a lot more room, and there's going to be much more of an expensive price tag for UFAs who play the game like he does, and he'll look like a bargain, and you can probably get more out of it in the offseason. But at the end of the day, I've loved his game this year. And as much as in the short term, I would love to see him stay here, I think this is going to be very similar to Jake Gensel, where you would love to keep him. You know how good he's been as a Penguin, but for the long-term health and future of the franchise, he's probably got to go.
Yeah, I still think either way, he's going to get moved, whether it's this Friday or by the summer. I still, if you had to fully ask me one prediction, I think it's going to be the summer. However, I have been hearing a couple of rumblings this week that there's a little bit of a bidding war going on for him right now. Again, people, this does not mean that they are going to deal him by Friday. They don't have to. Kyle Dubas really doesn't have to feel any pressure to deal him by Friday. I don't think this is 100% just like the Gensel situation, because last year I felt like the Penguins had to move Gensel pending UFA, Pat. But this year, you don't have to move Rakell by the deadline. You can wait until the summer, when I still think his value is going to be very high. That's just me, though. He has 29 goals right now. He's only 5 away from matching his career high of 34 during the 2017-18 season. I think even if he stays with the Penguins past the trade deadline, I think he is going to set a career high in goals and get closer to 35 to 40 this year. Teams will look at that and they'll be like, oh, he had 35, 40 this year. He's only making $5 million. The cap's going up. That is a bargain. We're going to put together a pretty solid offer still, because we don't really mind his contract anymore. Like, yeah, during the flat cap era, was it a bit high? Yes. Look at the cap going up now. Teams will look at that and be like, oh, we can get a 35, 40 goal scorer for $5 million when the cap is going up to where it is. Oh, well, we'll be all over that. So again, I still personally think it's going to happen this summer. However, there are still teams trying to talk to Dubas this week about maybe a trade by Friday. There's a little bit of a bidding war going on. Doesn't necessarily mean I think it's going to happen, but I'm just trying to at least give the people a little bit of information. I'm not Elliot Friedman over here, people. I will never be Elliot Friedman, of course. But sometimes I do hear things. I know you hear things sometimes as well, but just wanted to give that little tidbit to the listeners today.
For sure. And I'll say this to kind of build upon what you were saying about Rakell, a bidding war and his value. It's not going to just end if the trade deadline comes and goes and he's not moved. Those same teams are more than likely to still be interested in Rickard Rakell come the offseason, assuming that, and obviously we don't know, I don't, Hunter doesn't, we don't know which teams are the ones bidding for the services of Rickard Rakell. But the only way this truly goes away is if one of those teams absolutely crushes it at the deadline and gets somebody similar, and it kind of takes away that need. You look at how few teams are sellers at this deadline.
Yeah.
And the chances are that teams are still going to want Rickard Rakell's services over the summer. So you can just take the leverage that you have going into this trade deadline with Kyle Dubas, and for Rickard Rakell, and it only increases this summer because of all the factors we've discussed. Salary cap goes up. He has another, let's be conservative about this and say he scores 34 goals this season once we get to the end. 30-plus goal scorer at $5 million when you have a huge increase in the salary cap, that is a bargain bin price for a guy who probably won't match that again next year. But the way he plays the game, he's intelligent enough. He plays very well with elite talent. You can see him putting together a 20, 25 goal season. And next year, and then in the years to come, a 20 to 25 goal scorer, that's going to be the going rate for that kind of player, is around $5 million. So it won't be a sunk cost for a team that acquires him. And once you go into the offseason, you can continue to bid those teams against one another. You want to give us this? Well, this team's telling us they want to give us that. How do you match that? You got until this date to match it. If you don't, we're going to continue to go down the road with Team B. So very interesting times for Rickard Rakell. I do think overall, if I were a betting man, I would put it on in the summer as opposed to this week. Another player who is likely on the outs.
And again, if you do trade him this week, you need to get a really big package back. Like it has to be an offer. They're like, okay, I can't say no to it. If you don't get that, you can wait. There's really, again, you don't have that same pressure like you did last year with Jake, where you really had to move him because he's a pending UFA. This year, you can be like, okay, I'm going to really listen to offers. Teams can try to outbid each other, but if I'm not getting the offer that I want, I can wait.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. And let's talk about one more player who we expect to see moved ahead of this deadline. This is one that I imagine more than likely, put it at 95.5 for going to get moved, is a player you mentioned in the first segment, Anthony Beauviller. Tough penalty for him to take. He did own it after the game, saying, I could complain about the call, but I can't put my stick out there in that situation and give them a chance to make that call. It was not a good play. He also was one of the players who, after the game, admitted that this is weighing on his mind, that there's a good chance he's going to get moved at this deadline, saying, I'm aware of it, and it's definitely having an impact on me, so we'll see what happens. This is a tough week, but I will say that I really like this group of guys. Close group. I like it here quite a bit. But this is another player that you have to strike while the iron's hot. You look at his career, very streaky player. Sometimes he's a good offensive talent that chips in that good depth scoring of 15, 20-ish goals. Other years, he really struggles. So this is one of those years where he's chipping in well offensively as a depth player. And we know firsthand from watching this franchise win a Stanley Cup in 2009, win a Stanley Cup in 2016 and 2017. The big guns got it done, but the thing that put them over the top was they had players up and down the lineup who could chip in when you need it. And you look at Anthony Beauviller, and a contender probably wants him to play on their third line or their fourth line and chip in a handful of goals as they try to win a Stanley Cup.
Right, and you don't really have to give up much to get him. Probably a mid-round pick at best for him. I don't think you're going to get like a second. I mean, I would laugh if they got a second-round pick. I'd take that all the way to the bank, honestly. But you're probably looking at third, fourth, fifth, somewhere in that range, if you ask me. And another player, Pat, in the 95.5 range that probably will get moved, Matt Grzelcyk. I think he is going to get moved to one of the contenders, whether it's in the East or the West. Kind of similar price range as well, I think. Third, fourth, fifth round pick, something like that. But to everyone out there, just make sure you stay by your phones today, Thursday, especially Friday. Penguins don't play again until Friday, and they're going to want a full roster for that game because they're in Vegas. So one would think Kyle's going to try to get some business done a bit before Friday, either today or Thursday. Again, that's just pure speculation on my part because I don't think he wants to wait right until 3:00 Eastern time on Friday because they have a game 7 hours later. So one would think today or Thursday, I think he's going to try to get some business done.
Right, and that's really one of the Penguins' biggest concerns is that they do play Friday night,
Yeah.
and if you make that 11th hour deal and deal someone off of your active roster, you
Right.
could go into a game on Friday against a, once again, very good Vegas Golden Knights team, and you won't have enough players to
Mhm.
fill out a full roster. Granted, you can still play without a full roster. They're not going to make you forfeit the game, but that then increases injury risk. It increases ice time for guys who probably shouldn't have ice time that high. And it could be a really, really tough spot for the organization as they wait for whether it's call ups from Wilkes-Barre or the players that they acquire via a trade to get to Vegas or Minnesota this weekend. So you do have to figure that scenario with the schedule is kind of going to be the old cliche of deadlines spur action. And for the Penguins, yeah, just like every other team, the deadline is Friday at 3 o'clock,
Right.
but you got to figure with a 10 o'clock Pacific time game in Vegas on Friday, their deadline's probably a little bit earlier so they can make sure they've got a full roster to take into T-Mobile Arena on Friday
Stay
night.
by your phones today, people, and
Yes.
Thursday. Yes.
And again, as I said at the top of the show, Hunter and I have heard some rumblings that there could be some moves made today. And if those moves are made, we will jump back on here and try to get an episode out within the hour of the trade being confirmed. So, again, make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you've got notifications on YouTube so you'll be ready for those as soon as we drop them. But that'll do it for our middle segment. When we come back, it is still Wednesday. There is still games being played, and that means we've got to give out our MVP of the week as part of Warrior Helmet Wednesday. So stick with us. We will do that right after this. All right, welcome back. It's Wednesday. That means here on Locked On Penguins, I myself, Patrick Damp, alongside Hunter Hodes, give out our weekly MVP award as part of Warrior Helmet Wednesday. If you are new to the show, it is us paying homage to the 2016 Stanley Cup winning Pittsburgh Penguins. That season, the team gave out, after victories, their MVP of the game in the locker room, and they gave out a Warrior helmet as part of that MVP award. So each week, Hunter and I take a look back at the week that was, and we hand out our MVP. This season, it has been players the entire time, but there are times when we have been known to give out Warrior helmets to coaches, managers, and even you as the fans for sticking with this team. But the trend will continue this week with us handing out the Warrior Helmet Award to a player. And hopefully, at least for this season, it's not the last one he gets as a Penguin. We have to give it, at least I have to give it, Hunter. I imagine you're probably in agreement, but hey, who knows? I am going to give it to Rickard Rakell. Big week for him these last 3 games. Scores 4 goals in the last 3 games, 1 against the Bruins, 2 against the Maple Leafs, and then again last night against the Colorado Avalanche. Big week for him. Again, showing that he has had an extremely strong bounce back after a struggling year last year, and he just continues to hum along. It's been a very good season for him, and I'm very impressed by his game overall this season as a whole.
Yeah, 29 goals this season, 53 points in 63 games. He has been outstanding all year long, more than the bounce back that anyone saw coming. Honestly, this is exceeds all expectations with the way that he has played this year. I also have to give my helmet to Rakell. The way that he's able to be in position every game to score goals, his release continues to be great. He is such a great fit on that top line with Brian Rust and Sidney Crosby. And yeah, man, like for me, this was a pretty easy decision. I could have gone Sid again because he had that multi-point game against the Leafs, had another point against the Avalanche on Tuesday. Could have easily done that, Pat, but felt like I've given the Warrior helmet to Sid quite a few times this season as well. So I had to change it up at least a little bit this week. But Rakell, he gets my helmet this week, and I really hope that's not the last one that he gets. If I had to do a little bit of a runner-up, it's to the fans, honestly. You guys continue to watch or listen to this podcast. You guys continue to watch this team. Even though it's been a brutal year for the Penguins, you guys are also the real MVPs. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, we can't thank you guys enough for sticking with us. We know, I have said it on the show, Hunter has said it on the show, that it's been pretty much 2 decades of this team being among the best in the National Hockey League, and the last couple seasons have been unfamiliar territory for us as Penguins fans. But you're sticking with us. You're staying active in the comment section and on social media, which we love, because you know that the two of us are absolute sickos. And if these walls that surround Hunter and I could talk back, we'd probably talk hockey to them as well. But this is going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Penguins. As I have been saying all episode long, we will be keeping our phones on and keeping our notifications on, because there could be some trades as early as today. And if there are, once they're confirmed, Hunter and I will jump on here, do a quick breakdown to give our thoughts on the move. But for now, that is going to do it for the Wednesday edition of Locked On Penguins. For Hunter Hodes, I'm Patrick Damp. Thank you as always for tuning in. We'll be back with a new episode on Thursday. And if there are any moves, we'll be back with an immediate reaction as well. So thank you as all for tuning in. We will be back on Thursday.